Travis Wayne Goodsell. I finally had a comment which expressed confusion as to how Mormonism is Jewish. My first little picture clips that I had in the one particular video had confused her, and it didn't make sense to her. Nelson made sense, but the clips didn't. She was confused by that. And so, yeah, if you have been indoctrinated in the Mormon church like I have, your whole thought process is how to interpret and understand Scripture with Jesus. And as the Book of Signs, the complete Book of Signs that I had posted on Academia yesterday by request, and did the video talking about it, explaining that I was still in 2017 reconciling the biased doctrine of Jesus Christ, and how it was difficult and holding me back from the actual knowledge about the prophecies of the second coming and the signs of the second coming, and thus not the second coming but the latter days. And so I had to cast out all my Mormon bias. And that is a process to actually introspectively identify the Mormon bias and cast it out of your mind and replace it with a scientific methodology is quite a task. It's quite an undertaking. I remember on my New York mission that I had several masters to obey. District leader, zone leader, AP, mission president, and not too much mission companion, but that concept was very well on my mind. That what do I do when a district leader asked me to do something, but a zone leader asked me to do something contrary to that? Do I just obey the higher authority, or do I go with the one who's more immediately involved in my daily affairs? And then the other one that actually caused me to have a mental breakdown. My brain literally froze like a computer freezes when it's being hacked. And that was, do I follow unrighteous leaders when they ask me to do something that is wrong? Because it's not just like in the regular world where I can just say, no, I don't want to. No, this is leaders of the church who are supposed to be inspired by Jesus, who are asking me to do something that I know is wrong. Is it really wrong? Or do I just do it and I'll find out that it was true by the completion of the work? That was a difficult mental concept that my brain could not function with. And my brain literally shut down. And I still remember that. Still remember the feelings. On the corner of my mind. It was in it was in the Long Island part of my mission. not Terryville, was it? Or was that upstate New York? Or right in the... Oh, it was when I got sent down from Poughkeepsie to be with my new companion, who was supposed to go to Poughkeepsie. I wasn't supposed to go to him, but he wanted to stay for the baptism and refused to be transferred. And so I was told that it was just going to be a quick thing, baptism will occur, and then we can go right back up. So I only brought the one suit and an overnight bag, left the rest of the stuff back at Poughkeepsie apartment. And it turns out that we ended up staying there for a month. No baptism. And so, yeah, I had to finally let him know my stuff is all in Poughkeepsie still. We were supposed to be here for your baptism, and that's not happening. And so he didn't want to leave and go to another location in New York. But fun times. So anyway, Joseph Smith experienced a certain confusion as he records. Didn't actually happen. The real church history reveals what really happened. And so he's trying to talk about Christianity and why it's wrong. And so he talks about a religious fervor in Western New York. And it caused a stir and a division among the people. And says, some crying low here, and others low there. Some were contending for the Methodist faith, some for the Presbyterian, and some for the Baptist. Notwithstanding the great love which the converts to these different faiths expressed at the time of their conversion, and the great zeal manifested by the respective clergy who were active in getting up and promoting this extraordinary scene of religious feeling on the corner of my mind, in order to have everyone converted, as they were pleased to call it. Let them join what sect they pleased. Yet when the converts began to file off, some to one party and some to another, it was seen that the seemingly good feelings of both the priest and the converts were more pretended than real. I learned that you don't follow or obey bad orders, corrupt orders, in case you were wondering. For a scene of great confusion and bad feeling ensued. Priest contending against priest, convert against convert, so that all their good feelings one for another, if they ever had any, were entirely lost in a strife of words and a contest about opinions. Is any of this sounding familiar? Within Mormonism and those who leave Mormonism? And so, skipping to verse 8, during this time of great excitement, my mind was called up to serious reflection and great uneasiness. But though my feelings were deep and often poignant, still I kept myself aloof from all these parties, though I attended their several meetings as often as occasion would permit. So he's just going, sitting, listening, like a regular Mormon, like the majority of Mormons. Though in the process of time, my mind became partial to my wife's sect. See, there's some background information he's not telling us on purpose. Let's see. I was so unacquainted with men and things to come to any certain conclusion who was right and who was wrong. My mind at times was greatly excited. The cry and tumult were so great and incessant. The Presbyterians were most decided against the Baptists and Methodists, and used all the powers of both reason and sophistry to prove their errors, or at least to make people think they were in error. On the other hand, the Baptists and Methodists were in turn equally zealous in endeavoring to establish their own tenets and disprove all others. In the midst of this war of words and tumult of opinions, I often said to myself, what is to be done? Who of all these parties are right? Or are they all wrong together? If any one of them be right, which is it, and how shall I know it? And then reads the Epistle of James. The teachers of religion of the different sects understood the same passages of Scripture so differently as to destroy all confidence in settling the question by an appeal to the Bible. They purposely fought and contended so that an appeal to the Bible was worthless, and thus they were able to maintain the status quo of their own personal belief system. Okay? So, we'll now go to section 1 of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 16. They seek not the Lord to establish his righteousness, but every man walketh in his own way, after the image of his own God, whose image is in the likeness of the world, and whose substance is that of an idol. This is what Joseph is talking about in an expanded story form. All of these Christian converts and priests and members were not seeking to know the truth about the Scriptures. They had no interest in seeking the truth about the Scriptures. They had their religion with its particular interpretation, and it became a tribal warfare, gang affiliation. If you are not Presbyterian, you are the enemy. If you are not Methodist, you're the enemy. And so what they were doing was using their religion, and it's still going on today, and Mormons are doing it too. They were using their religion to justify their manner of living. That their manner of living is approved by their God, and they could appeal to the Bible to justify what they were doing, or the Book of Mormon in Mormons' cases, or Doctrine and Covenants. And I see that in Mormons with their comments. And I see it in the way they treat me on my video, on my channel. See, I am free to worship how, where, and what I may. But when I do a video with the interpretation of Joseph Smith as Jewish, as his scriptures in the learning of the Jews, I get attacked by Mormons who have these pretended feelings of love and tolerance, and it all hits the fan. Makes a big old mess because they reveal who they really are inside. They're religious bigots. They're hateful. They're racist, sexist. And that's the real Mormonism. Mormonism has nothing to do with Jesus. They're not interested in seeking Jesus and following his righteousness. Just like Christians, they're not doing it. They're not treating me as Jesus would, which is to leave me alone. I'm not attacking any specific Mormon. I don't know you. How am I going to attack you if I don't know you? I only know who I've met in my lifetime, which is a lot of Mormons since moving to Utah. But you specifically, the people that have commented, I know none of them. And yet, they, for some reason, think that they're going to interrupt my channel, and they assume that their comment is going to be posted for everyone to see. They don't realize I hold all comments for review. And they think to make themselves popular, to establish their righteousness, their way, after the image of their interpretation of the Christ, because they disapprove of mine, regardless of whether I'm right or not. And I see this back and forth when I would check out other people's comments, back in the day when I would do that. People attack other people, and it's called trolling, and it's not Christ-like. But Mormons would do it to ex-Mormons, or people investigating the church, doing videos about what they've learned about the church, which Mormons are not happy with. No, you need to just pray and have a feeling that makes the church look good. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong, and we need to oppose you. That's not going to convince them, guys. Bullying other people does not convince those victims of your bullying that your religion and your religious views are true. Because the same situation with Chad Daybell is that his other extended family members are like shocked and horrified that as a Mormon, and they're not Mormon, he's committing the most atrocious of murders. You know, a Jeffrey Dahmer style. You know, it's just horrific hatred for somebody to murder in such a fashion as he's done. And his family is horrified and shocked because he was Mormon. What is the Mormon church teaching him? That he would do something like that. This is their concerns. And I refer you to Difficult Research, the YouTube channel. She's updating all of us on the hearing for Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. And so I'm not sending you to attack her. Shame on you if that's what you intend to do. You're not going to convince her you're the good guy by attacking her. I use her for news and information about the case. She's a good person. She reached out to me to find out why Mormons would do such a thing. And so, yeah, she's been turned off from Mormonism permanently. There is no way any Mormon can now break that wall that Chad Daybell built in her mind, that Mormonism is good. Because the God of Chad Daybell is literally a nightmare. A Lucifer on steroids. And that scares her. As it should anybody. You do not get to establish your own righteousness. You do not get to say that the way you're living your life is approved by God. Because you are creating your own God. The scriptures teach us, line upon line, precept upon precept. You need to do the work in your life to run the test for each and every single precept to find out if it's good or bad. That's what Joseph Smith did. He started with James. That's what he's teaching you. And so for you to go to Joseph and accuse him of worshiping a false god, that it's not the true Jesus that you yourself created, because it was Constantine who created Jesus in the first place. And because he doesn't exist, all Christian followers who believe therefore get to mold that Jesus into their own image. And so anything that you think is evil is based on your interpretation of who your Christ is. Likewise with good. And especially when you impose it on others, and especially when you not only impose it on others, but you impose it with violence and threats of violence, death threats, threats to remain silent, telling me to back off on Mormonism, leave the church alone. You guys are in the wrong. Because the church has lied to us. That's an established fact. They came out with the Gospel Topics essays, confessing they've lied to us. They now have the Joseph Smith papers that exposes with primary source documents that the church has lied to us, that has purposely, maliciously led us astray. And they still go on, continuing to deceive as many as who will believe them, and create their own image of Mormonism and the Mormon Jesus Christ. And so for me to come out and say, he's not even Christian, it's not even Jesus. Joseph Smith is talking about the Jewish Christ from Jewish scripture, who is a mortal, and he's going to be Mormon. He is Mormon because he's here now on earth. He's been on earth. He started his ministry in 2017. He's been reaching out to Mormons. Hearken to me. I'm needing to save your life if you hearken to me. But Mormons won't. They're not seeking him to establish his righteousness. They're walking in their own way after the image of Jesus, who is in the likeness of the world that they've created for themselves. And he's nothing but an idol, because he doesn't exist. You create him. You give him power. He doesn't even exist. He's just a character in books that are prophecies of the latter days. And you don't understand that. So, when you go out on your missions and you're giving the Book of Mormon to people, this is weird, because this is how Brigham Young destroyed Joseph Smith's church. He was a member of the Quorum of the 12 that went out to preach the Book of Mormon. but was wrongfully telling people it was Christian and Jesus is the Christ, rather than the learning of the Jews, which the Book of Mormon says in the beginning. And as a result, his church is still doing it to this day. They culturally appropriated Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon, and are going around the world still to this day saying it's Christian and Jesus is the Christ. But the Book of Mormon and the words of Joseph Smith tell us that this church, for being Christian, for having Jesus as the Christ, is the great and abominable Christ. Babylon, in verse 16 here. Its founder is Lucifer, which can be seen as the doctrines by the keystone on the doors of the Salt Lake Temple. That's what a keystone means. We've all learned it. One class every 4 years. We get taught about a keystone and what it means in Sunday school. It means that the symbol on it represents the doctrines taught within the building. And on the keystone of the Salt Lake Temple is the inverted pentagram of Lucifer, meaning it's the doctrines of Lucifer that are taught within that building. What was in that building? Brigham Young's endowment ceremony. Loyalty oaths to the church under the penalty of death. Lucifer's secret covenants and oaths to keep them secret. Those secret covenants and oaths are anti-American, anti-government, because it promotes the church over everything. And you got to keep it a secret from the government because we need to keep the church safe. You need to be loyal to the church. You need to protect and defend their crimes, their sins, their abominations. Otherwise, you must be forfeit. All they're doing is mocking Joseph Smith, mocking the Book of Mormon, because the prophets have fooled so many people into thinking the Book of Mormon is literal history about Jesus. And even those who don't believe it is go away complaining that it's not, but don't even bother to know what it is. They just know it's not Christian and it's not Jesus, not literal history. But they never learn what it is. Learning of the Jews. And so the church still wins. This was the great plot of Brigham Young, to take people so far away from the truth that even if they disagree with it, they'll never know what the truth really was. And that is abominable.